Hi, welcome. Chapter 3, Part 1, The Delhi Sultans. In Chapter 2, we learnt about new kings and kingdoms in the subcontinent between 7th and 12th century. We learned that a very important dynasty, the Cholas, ruled the South India, especially Tamil Nadu. Now in this chapter, we meet another rulers of great power, the Delhi Sultanate. See, I have added some additional information to this chapter so the UPS and the KS aspirants could benefit. So the chapter has gone a little lengthy. Therefore, I have split into two parts so you won't be bored. Okay. So in this chapter, we learn about the Delhi Sultanate. Delhi became an important city only in the 12th century. Take a look at this table. Delhi first became the capital of kingdom under the Tomara Rajputs. An important Tomara ruler Anangapala III ruled between 1130 and 1145. Anangapala Thoma is often described as the founder of Delhi. Tomara dynasty was defeated in the middle of the 12th century by the Chauhans or Chahmanas of Ajmer. It was under the Tomaras and Chauhans that Delhi became an important commercial center. Many rich Jaina merchants lived in the city and constructed several temples. Coins minted here, called Delhi Wall, had been used widely. Now look at this map. Here you can see the region covered by the Delhi Sultanate in the early years. The transformation of Delhi into a capital that controlled vast areas of the subcontinent started with the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate in the beginning of the 13th century. 5 dynasties together made the Delhi Sultanate. Which are they? The early Turkish rulers, the Khalji dynasty, the Tugluq dynasty, the Sayyid dynasty, and the Lodi dynasty. Let's have a look at the rulers of first 3 dynasties who ruled Delhi in the 13th and 14th centuries. The early Turkish rulers or Mamluk Dynasty or Slave Dynasty was established in Delhi by Qutab Minar. It lasted from 1206 to 1290. It was the first of the 5 dynasties to rule as the Delhi Sultanate. Qutabdin Aibak was also known as Lakpaksh, which means giver of lakhs, for his generosity. Shamsuddin Iltutmish was the 3rd ruler and ruled until 1236. Iltutmish introduced the Iqtidari system in which the kingdom was divided into Iqtas, which were assigned to nobles. We'll learn about this system later in this chapter. Sultan Iltutmish died in 1236 and was succeeded by his daughter Razia Sultana, as he did not consider his sons fit to be a ruler. Razia Sultana was the first and last Muslim woman to rule over Delhi. She was killed by her brother's forces. Next important ruler after Razia was Ghiyasuddin Balban. The final sultan of this dynasty, Queqbat, was murdered by Jalaluddin Firuz Khalji, thus ending the Mamluk dynasty to replace it with Khalji dynasty. Have a look at this table. You will see important early Turkish rulers: Qutabdin Aibak, Shamsuddin Iltutmish, Razia Sultana, and Ghiyasuddin Balban. Khalji or Khilji dynasty was the second dynasty that ruled between 1290 and 1320. Jalaluddin Khalji was the founder of Khalji dynasty. He was murdered by Alauddin Khalji, his son-in-law, who ascended the throne. He was the first sultan to attack South India. Alauddin Khalji was one of India's greatest kings and one of the world's greatest military geniuses. Alauddin Khilji died in 1316. Successors of Alauddin Khilji were weak rulers. Eventually, in 1320, the governor of Punjab, Qasim Malik, led a group of nobles, conquered Delhi and captured the throne. Qasim Malik assumed the name Ghiyasuddin Tugluq at Delhi and founded the Tugluq dynasty. See, important rulers of Khalji dynasty: Jalaluddin Khalji and Alauddin Khalji. Tughlaq dynasty emerged in 1320 and ended in 1414. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq or Ghazi Malik was the founder of the Tughlaq dynasty. Muhammad Tughlaq succeeded him. Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq has been described by some as a mad king or wise fool because he undertook numerous administrative reforms and most of them failed due to the lack of plan and judgment. Firoz Shah Tughlaq succeeded him. He was a just and generous ruler. He died in 1388 and the Tughlaq dynasty could not continue much after his death. Tughlaq dynasty ended with the invasion of Mongol ruler Timur. Important Tughlaq dynasty rulers Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, Muhammad Tughlaq, Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Now, the Delhi Sultans built many cities in the area that we now know as Delhi. Look at this map. It shows selected Sultanate cities of Delhi in 13th–14th centuries. You can locate the cities Delhi Kuna, Siri and Jahanpana. Finding out about the Delhi Sultans. Inscriptions, coins and architecture provide a lot of information, but very important and valuable are the Tariq. Tariq is an Arabic word meaning history. Tariq is singular and Tawariq is plural. Tawariqs are histories written in Persian. Persian was the language of administration under the Delhi Sultans. Here you can see this is a page from one of the Persian Tawariq. How did they make these manuscripts? There are 4 stages in the making of a manuscript: preparing the paper, writing the text, melting gold to highlight important words and passages, and preparing the binding. The authors of Tawariq were learned men, secretaries, administrators, poets and courtiers. They recounted or narrated events and advised rulers on governance, emphasizing the importance of just rule. What is just rule? The circle of justice. Fakhr-e-Mudabbir wrote in the 13th century, "A king cannot survive without soldiers. The soldiers cannot live without salaries. Salaries come from the revenue collected from peasants. But peasants can pay revenue only when they are prosperous and happy. This happens when the king promotes justice and honest governance." Keep the following additional details in mind. The authors of Tawariq lived in cities, mainly Delhi, and hardly ever in villages. They often wrote their histories for sultans in the hope of rich rewards. These authors advised rulers on the need to preserve an ideal social order based on birthright and gender distinctions. What is birthright? Birthright is the privileges claimed on account of birth. For example, people believed that nobles inherited their rights to govern because they were born in certain families. And what are gender distinctions? They are social and biological differences between women and men. Usually, these differences are used to argue that men are superior to women. So the authors of Tawariq advised rulers on the need to maintain an ideal social order based on this birthright and gender distinction. To be more clear, look at this. Sultan Iltutmish was the 3rd ruler in the 1st dynasty of Delhi Sultanate, the slave or Mamluk Dynasty. In 1236, his daughter Razia became Sultan. The chronicler of that time, Minaji Siraj, recognized that she was more able and qualified than all her brothers, but he was not comfortable at having a queen as a ruler. Nor were the rulers happy at her attempts to rule independently. She was removed from the throne in 1240. What did Minaj-e-Siraj thought about Razia? Minaj-e-Siraj thought that the queen's rule went against the ideal social order created by God. What is this ideal social order? Women were supposed to be subordinates to men. He therefore asked, in the register of God's creation, Since her account did not fall under the column of men, how did she gain all of her excellent qualities? See, he believed that only men were supposed to have all the qualities to be rulers. On her inscriptions and coins, Razia mentioned that she was the daughter of Sultan Iltutmish. This was in contrast to the Queen Rudramadevi of the Kakatiya dynasty of Warangal, part of modern Andhra Pradesh. Rudramadevi changed her name on her inscriptions and pretended she was a man. Another queen, Dida, ruled in Kashmir. Her title is interesting. It comes from Didi, or elder sister, an obviously affectionate term given to a loved ruler by her subjects. See, women rulers were treated or accepted differently in various dynasties. From garrison town to empire, the expansion of the Delhi Sultanate. Fortified towns are protected towns with defensive walls. Here you can see one of the ruins of such defensive walls. These fortified towns were protected by garrisons. A garrison is a group of soldiers protecting the town or a city. So a garrison town is a fortified settlement with soldiers. In the early 13th century, the control of the Delhi Sultans was only on these fortified towns occupied by garrisons. The Sultans didn't have control over the hinterland. Hinterland is a nearby or adjacent land to a city or port that supplied with goods and services, so the Sultanate did not have the tax revenue. Therefore, they had to depend upon trade or tribute or robbery for supplies. Controlling garrison towns in distant Bengal and Sindh from Delhi was extremely difficult. Delhi's authority was also challenged by Mongol invasion from Afghanistan and by their own governors who rebelled at any sign of Sultan's weakness. The Sultanate barely survived these challenges. Its consolidation or merging occurred during the reign of Ghiyasuddin Balban and further expansion under Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad Tugluq. The campaigns of expansion were along the internal frontier and external frontier. The first set of campaigns along the internal frontier of the Sultanate aimed at campaigning the hinterlands or nearby lands of the garrison towns. During these campaigns, forests were cleared in the Ganga and Yamuna Doab or in the area between these rivers. Thus, the forest dwellers like hunter-gatherers and herders were expelled from their habitat. Then, these lands were given to peasants to promote agriculture. New fortresses, garrison towns, and towns were established to protect trade routes and to promote regional trade. The second expansion occurred along the external frontier of the Sultanate. Military expeditions into southern India started during the reign of Alauddin Khalji. See, in this map you can find Alauddin Khilji's campaigns into South India. This expansion culminated during the reign of Muhammad Tugluq. In their campaigns in the south, Sultanate armies captured elephants, horses and slaves and carried away precious metals. Muhammad Tughlaq was the second ruler of Tughlaq dynasty. By the end of Muhammad Tughlaq's reign, that means 150 years after the Delhi Sultanate began, the armies of the Delhi Sultanate had marched across a large part of the subcontinent. They had defeated rival armies and seized cities. The Sultanate collected taxes from the peasantry and dispensed justice. The Masjid. A mosque is called a masjid in Arabic, literally a place where a Muslim prostrates in reverence to Allah. In a congregational mosque, Masjid-i-Jami or Jama Masjid, Muslims read their prayers together. These prayers are known as namaz. Members of the congregation choose the most respected, learned male as their leader for the rituals of prayer. This leader is known as Imam. He also delivers the sermon during the Friday prayer. This sermon is known as Khutbah. During prayer, Muslims stand facing Mecca. In India, this is to the west. This direction is called the Qibla. The Delhi Sultans built several mosques in cities all over the subcontinent. These demonstrated their claims to be protectors of Islam and Muslims. Mosques also helped to create the sense of community of believers who shared a belief system and code of conduct. It was necessary to reinforce this idea of a community because Muslims came from a variety of backgrounds. Now let's see some of the important mosques and architecture during Delhi Sultanate. Quat al-Islam Mosque and Minaret. Quat al-Islam Mosque was built during the last decade of the 12th century by Qutab Minar. He was the first Sultan of Delhi and the founder of slave dynasty. This was the congregational mosque of the first city built by the Delhi Sultans, described in the chronicles as Delhi Khuna. The mosque was enlarged by Iltutmish and Alauddin Khalji. What you see in this picture is the Quad al-Islam Mosque built by Qutbuddin Aibak. The Qutab Minar is a tower of victory of Muhammad Ghori over the Rajput king Prithviraj Chauhan in 1192. The minaret was named after a Sufi saint, Khwaja Qutbuddin Bakhtiar Kaki. Qutbuddin Aibak, who was a deputy of Muhammad Ghori, started the construction of the Qutab Minar's first story in 1199. Aibak's successor and son-in-law Shamsuddin Iltutmish completed further 3 stories. When the Minar was struck by lightning in 1369, Firoz Shah Tugluq replaced the damaged story and added one more. So you see, the Qutab Minar is a 5-story building. Begumpur Mosque. It was built in the 14th century during the reign of Muhammad Tugluq. To address the constant threat of the Mongols, Tughlaq built the fortified city of Jahanpana. Jahanpana in Persian meant the sanctuary of the world. It was the main mosque of Jahanpana, Muhammad Tughlaq's new capital in Delhi. Moth Ki Masjid. It was built in 1505 during the reign of Sikandar Lodi by his minister Wazir Mian Bhoya. Mosque of Jamali Kamali. It was built in the late 1520s during the reign of Lodi dynasty. Jamali was a Sufi saint, a court poet during the time of Lodi dynasty, and Kamali was his disciple. See, all these mosques show an evolution in architectural tradition of subcontinent that came to its peak in Shah Jahan's mosque in Delhi. In the next part, we will see how the Khaljis and Tughlaqs managed the administration and consolidation of the territories. Thanks for watching and learning. Thank you.